Good evening. Tonight we turn to a rapidly developing story on the eastern front of Ukraine, a story that could define the next phase of this war. President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that Russia has massed, in his words, up to 100,000 troops near Pokrovsk, a key city in eastern Ukraine. His remarks, delivered in Kiev, underline the gravity of the situation. Zelensky stated that while most of the front line remains stable and under Ukrainian control, the Pokrovsk direction has become the most serious concern. He emphasized that Russian forces have been concentrating heavily in that area, preparing, as he put it, offensive actions. The president stressed the importance of recognizing this build-up, monitoring it closely, and keeping control of the situation. His comments, though measured, carried both urgency and determination, a warning not just to his own people, but to the international community. Pokrovsk itself is no ordinary city. Historically known as Krasnoarmysk, it sits along critical supply routes that connect Ukraine's defensive lines across the Donbass. Its location makes it both a shield for Ukraine's positions to the west and a tempting target for Russia, which has sought for months to push deeper into Donetsk region. If Pokrovsk were to fall, analysts say, the consequences could be severe: a logistical setback for Ukraine, a symbolic victory for Moscow, and a potential turning point in the momentum of this grinding war. For now, the front remains intact, but satellite imagery, military intelligence, and eyewitness reports point to a steady influx of Russian manpower, artillery, and armor toward the outskirts of the city. The figure of 100,000 troops, whether precise or approximate, reflects a scale of concentration not seen in this sector for months. To many observers, it suggests preparation not for defense, but for a major push. The timing of this build-up is particularly notable. International peace efforts, once described as urgent, appear now to have stalled. Negotiations in Geneva, Istanbul, and other capitals have produced no meaningful breakthrough. Instead, Moscow has pressed forward with mobilization, while Kiev has doubled down on appeals to its Western allies for more support. Inside NATO, Zelensky's remarks are being treated with utmost seriousness. Intelligence officials in Brussels and Washington have warned that such a concentration of troops could herald the start of a new offensive phase, one designed to stretch Ukraine's defenses and test the limits of Western assistance. Surveillance flights have increased over eastern Ukraine, while military planners assess whether Russia intends a single concentrated strike or a series of feints meant to destabilize Ukrainian positions. The international response has been swift but cautious. Western capitals have renewed their calls for de-escalation while pledging continued military support. But behind closed doors, officials admit concern. If Russia does indeed launch an assault on Pokrovsk, the strain on Ukraine's already stretched defensive lines could be immense. More weapons, more air defenses, and more ammunition will likely be required. For civilians inside Pokrovsk, the warning has already been felt. Over recent weeks, thousands of residents have packed belongings and boarded evacuation buses, heading westward in search of safety. Others remain behind, some unwilling to abandon their homes, others convinced that Ukrainian troops will manage to hold the city. The streets of Pokrovsk, once bustling, now bear the marks of a community under siege, sandbagged checkpoints, shuttered shops, and the echo of air raid sirens. Humanitarian agencies describe a deteriorating situation. Supplies of medicine and food are running low, while hospitals brace for potential mass casualties should the city come under attack. Aid groups have appealed to international donors for urgent funding, warning that any offensive could unleash a wave of displacement comparable to what was seen in Mariupol, Bakhmut, and Avdiivka. Yet even amid fear, there is resilience. Local officials continue to organize evacuations, distribute rations, and reassure the population that defensive preparations are underway. For many Ukrainians, the determination to resist runs deep, forged by years of bombardment and occupation. Zelensky's warning, then, is both a caution and a rallying cry. The threat is real, but the fight continues. Military analysts are divided on Moscow's intentions. Some believe that the massing of troops is part of a broader psychological campaign meant to intimidate, to spread fear, and to force Ukraine into diverting resources from other critical sectors. Others see it as preparation for a decisive strike, one that could reshape the front lines before winter. Either way, the message is clear. Pokrovsk has become the latest flashpoint in a war defined by grinding attrition and sudden surges of violence. This development also carries implications beyond Ukraine. Should Russia succeed in overwhelming Pokrovsk, It would strengthen Moscow's hand in any future negotiations. It would demonstrate that despite Western sanctions and support for Kyiv, Russia retains the capacity to mount large-scale operations. Conversely, if Ukraine manages to repel the build-up and hold the city, it would reinforce Zelensky's argument that with enough support, Ukraine can stand firm and prevent further Russian advances. For now, Zelensky's words echo with a stark warning. Up to 100,000 troops are near Pokrovsk, preparing offensive actions. His statement is both a factual report and a strategic signal to his citizens, to his soldiers, and to the world. The situation, he insists, remains under control, but the risks are high and vigilance is essential. As the war grinds on, Pokrovsk now finds itself at the center of global attention. What happens in the coming days and weeks will not only determine the fate of this eastern city, but could shape the course of the conflict itself. This is not the first time Ukraine has faced such pressure, and it will not be the last. But each new concentration of Russian troops, each new build-up along the front line, raises the stakes for a conflict that has already devastated communities and unsettled the global order. Tonight, from Kyiv's presidential podium to the streets of Pokrovsk, the message is the same. The front is holding, but the danger is mounting. The world watches closely, waiting to see whether this is the beginning of a new offensive or a calculated gamble in Russia's long war of attrition.